Headlines about politics, petrol prices, protests, they often bury stories about people. For over a week now, the people of Assam have been suffering. Assam is a northeastern state in India. This is where it is located on the map. The state is home to 36 million people. As we speak, Assam is struggling to cope with floods. 33 of its 35 districts have been hit. 4.7 million people have been affected. At least 82 people have lost their lives. 3.3 million animals have been affected. At least 5,000 of them have been washed away. More than 113,000 hectares of cultivated land has been inundated. So have 3,000 villages. Trains have been cancelled. Many parts of the state have been cut off. This is what Assam looks like today. In the capital, Dispur, roads have disappeared. Some 150 kilometers from the capital, people are using a rope to cross a swollen river. 2 policemen were washed away by floodwaters while rescuing stranded people. Let me show you this house. This is what it looks like. There's water everywhere, and this is the story everywhere.
Floodwater has inundated our house. This has created a lot of issues for people here.
There is water everywhere. Around 6 to 7 kilometers of the area is flooded. People don't have any place to live and they have to go to higher grounds as this whole area is flooded.
People have lost their homes. They've been forced to move to higher ground. Many have taken refuge in shelters. Some 200,000 people are currently living in shelter camps. In many parts of the state, food is running out. So is drinking water. On the 19th of June, a boat was crossing a river to sell milk and vegetables. It capsized with 9 people on board. This woman is cooking food on a cot because she is out of options.
It has been 1 week since I have been cooking in such conditions. The authorities do not check our whereabouts.
And yet this is not a one-off year. Assam suffers floods every year. There are 10 major rivers flowing through the state. Brahmaputra is the largest. It is also one of the biggest in Asia. The river flows from Tibet, goes through India before entering Bangladesh. Then there is the Barak River. Over the decades, people have built their houses around these rivers. They've profited from the fertile land. Minor floods have happened every couple of years. They've enhanced the soil's fertility and people have not complained. But now these floods have become major. The rivers have become flood-prone. And Assam has become one of the most flood-prone states in this country. 40% of this state is at risk of flooding. This is 4 times the national mark. Assam has nearly 10% of India's flood-prone land. How did this happen? Let's start with climate change. Today, even on a normal day, the Brahmaputra has more water than usual. This is because the glacier in Tibet is melting. Come early monsoon, there are torrential rains in these states. Then there are neighboring hill states, Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. When it rains in these states, the water flows into Assam. And before you know it, the river is flowing above the danger mark and it does not take too long for it to breach its banks. The muddy banks have been eroded by decades of human activity. 4.27 lakh hectares of the state has been eroded by floods since 1950. All of these factors make Assam's rivers more prone to flooding. So every time the Brahmaputra or any of these rivers breaks the banks, Assam ends up looking like this. In 2021, this was the picture. Also in 2020,
The situation had been a little grim because there had been heavy rainfall since the past few days, and the whole of Assam is inundated, and the quantum depends, it varies from place to place.
Today, every river in Assam is flowing above the danger mark. This year, the situation is especially bad. Many say it's the worst they've seen in their lifetime. Our reporter has been on ground for a few days now, telling the story of some of the most affected areas. He sent us a quick update using a car headlight because the flood has snapped the power supply.
The overall flood situation in Indian northeastern state of Assam is very bad. Around 48 lakh people were affected by the floods. 10 people have died in last 24 hours. Indian Army and NDRF are working together with the state forces.
Well, you can blame nature and climate change for these floods. Who do you blame for the casualties? It's not that the flood is killing these people. It's the lack of preparedness. In 1980, a Brahmaputra board was set up. It was to come up with measures to control floods. The board suggested that dams and reservoirs be built in the state. What happened then? Critics say while the dams were constructed, they were not built keeping the state's ecology in mind. You see, what Assam needs urgently is an integrated flood forecasting, warning and response system. In 2014, India signed an agreement with China. Beijing agreed to provide crucial flood data on the Brahmaputra. This was in exchange for $8.2 million every year. But can India continue to rely on China for something so crucial? It must build its own capabilities, its own models for flood prediction. People need to be warned well in advance. If required, they need to be rehabilitated for good. India must do all it can to put an end to this yearly mayhem. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.